It helps if you remember volume. We're going to get loads of echo.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all of your reality is fantastic.
Oh, feedback. Turn down volume. Yeah, turn it down. Blooming kids, they're loud music. Sorry about that. Too busy reaching for different control buttons and clicking stuff on the screen, trying to multitask to activate this, that, and the other as it goes. And is the camera going to work now? No. Yeah, hooray, just about. Welcome. Introduce you with a cough. Welcome back again. Another edition, episode, broadcast, show, podcast, thing, blah, frequency emanating from servers somewhere out there. On this date, the 27th of the 5th, 2019, star date 27th. A 2 and a 7 is a 9, you know. I don't know if you can do mathematics, but anyway, yes, it's maybe because it's 8 p.m. start, it's made things a bit wobbly in the beginning. I apologise for that, but we'll get on with it in a second. I'll just try and find all my screens. Say evening in a chat room if you can spell it right. If I can spell it right, if I can get me words out. Right, hello to everyone in the chat room. Dottie, hello, Dottie. Hope you're right, mate. And Dave Iron, hello. And Stewie, hello. I'll come back in a sec. Mention your comment you left. Well, it's more just about general stuff. Plankton Breath, hello. Interesting name. Does that mean you're a blue whale? Does a blue whale have plankton breath? I don't know. That's everyone so far. So hello to the lurkers, if there's any lurkers out there. I'm not looking at view numbers or whatever, so I've no idea if there's more viewing than there is commenting, but hello to everyone in the chat room. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, another edition of Sol Excalibre on this bank holiday. This bank holy day. I have been trying to remember, and I haven't made any effort to look up online or to research, like, why is this particular day in the calendar a holy day? And I can't remember off the top of my head, so I'm like, what was it? What makes this a holy day? Is it just because the banks need a rest? They might be on holiday, but is your money on holiday? Interestingly enough, the people who made a documentary called The Great Mortgage Swindle, Michael Bonacia, I think, I might be getting his name slightly wrong, but check out The Great Mortgage Swindle. That appeared on RT News Network yesterday or today, I think. I saw it earlier today, so I'm not sure when they first uploaded it. But it shows, yeah, and I know it's RT Network, and I'm sure, you know, people can cope with the reality that the mainstream media news outlets are utilised as propaganda tools by one side or the other, blah, blah, blah. The BBC is just as much state propaganda as RT is just as much Russian propaganda. I'm sure you can all cope with that and not just fall into a trap of, oh, you can't look at that because it's from the Russians. Blame the Russians crap. Yeah, but I thought it was worth mentioning the fact that that kind of information is now reaching the mainstream. Russia Today will quite happily help stuff like that reach the public because it serves their purpose of making it seem like your government is crap, which they are. You know, they're not telling us anything new, but that's, you know, that suits their methodology to show you stuff like that. But at least it's reaching a bigger audience. Hopefully they'll get more traction on that documentary and the information that goes along with it, because it's been around for a while now. I think last year sometime they first put it out, maybe even a couple of years ago, I'm not sure. But it has been out for an amount of time, and it should have reached a lot more people by now. And it's another one of those things that just seems to be constantly gliding under the radar. They hope that the general populace don't realise it's there and start paying it any attention to see the details of it. Now, just let it glide by, like a just a bit of dust in the distance. Take no notice of it. Pay it no mind. That was one thing over this week. I'm going to rant a little bit about some of the stuff from the past, well, really this weekend. Even though it's a bank holiday, I'm not going to get into stuff talking about the bank holidays. Like, that's to do with the system, unless it happens to be a particular holy day for a religion that you're part of or are interested in or whatever. Yeah, but other than that, it's another day. So the only sort of caveat I'll include with that is saying that I found it, coincidental timing that they were having the elections at this time, that it coincides with a bank holiday here in the UK, and it's in effect it's a bank holiday in the USA as well because it's Memorial Day. So convenient timing that they set it to take place on the weekend when more people would have the time available to them because they've got a day off work, etc. They got the Sunday and the Monday. I know the vote didn't take place today, but it means that they've sort of got a long enough weekend so they don't necessarily feel that it is imposing on their time on the Sunday, because they've always got the Monday to enjoy the rainy weather. I'm sure that in other places in Europe they've got lots of lovely sunny weather at the moment, but hopefully you get the point. Yeah, convenient timing that it happened on this bank holiday weekend. To try and explain the subtitle I put in this week, I never thought to check the YouTube page is going. All I did was spam the mute button when I was trying to deal with the feedback. Yeah, it is all on there. Yeah, the subtitle, The Littlest Giant, and the EU is dead, long live the EU, which I'm sure should just make pretty obvious sense. The reference anyway, hopefully the reference makes sense for people, what's been going on over the last week and weekend. I heard comments from, I don't know what MEP it was. I think he might have been Spanish, but I'm not sure on that. But in the rolling news coverage of them talking like they do to different politicians, saying, how do you think you did in the elections, etc., etc. And this is obviously a selection of a European-wide picture, because elections have been taking place all over the place, all across Europe. So I was catching bits of news reports about how the elections were going. But one of the talking heads, one of the politicians that they asked, said, this is the birth of the new EU. This is the beginning of the new EU. And that just got me reconsidering a lot of what I've been talking about this year, about the Phoenix effect. And again, the convenient timing of this election taking place such that it's drawn the British public in particular back into the whole political structure of the European Parliament, such that now we've got supposed nationalists getting themselves elected. Farage in particular, I think just one name to throw out there because it's pretty obvious, and it's, keyword. It's a keyword that will connect you with loads of stuff going on in the news at the moment. Farage. Just his name is like a aristocracy piss take, basically. Oh, Farage. I'm sure he's laughing his tits off. Even though he got milkshaked, which gets him lots of publicity and serves to justify their the police state crackdown on the interactions between the public and their supposed representatives that call themselves politicians. But yeah, supposed nationalist whose argument is based on, well, I've got to go there so that I can make them do Brexit. So in other words, mate, you want to justify the very system that is ignoring your request, that is breaching their contract that they had with you, saying that if ever you wanted to leave, you could just leave. You know, that's it, goodbye. You got to join in with their arguments about how they get to decide whether we leave or not. But you say you're doing it because you want to leave. Well, why are you even taking part? That is nonsensical. That is inverse. That is illogical. You are further justifying their existence and their claim to authority over us and their claim to some kind of legitimate contract with us when they've been in breach of that contract, and our own governmental system has been in breach of the various social contracts that they have with their own citizenry, etc., etc., etc. The whole thing is a ridiculous farce. But it re-engages the public attention with that process of legitimising that European Parliament. As I say, it had me, that one politician talking head using that phrase of "this is the birth of the new EU" had me thinking again, that Phoenix reference. And we seem to be experiencing during this year a major change, a major switch gear, a new chapter beginning, old chapter being closed off and a new chapter being opened. And that's been showing in many different ways, both in real world events and talking points such as elections and governmental changes and Theresa May retiring, told you so, but also in the semi-real, the fictional world that is used to manipulate people in the real world. So media entertainment and the narratives and propaganda that are pushed out through that media entertainment. Oh yeah, I was going to mention as well, it's number 19. This is episode 19 of season 2, which is, you know, weren't exactly much of a gap between this and the last lot. It was just a way of helping to differentiate between using a number for each episode rather than having a extensive textual title for each episode. But yeah, it's number 19, 19. And 19 is a very, very interesting number. Did you know the letter S is the 19th letter of the English alphabet? Why is it the 19th letter? Not by coincidence, not because back in the past somebody was, oh, well, yeah, well, we need these letters to use in a language, so we just write them out, blah, 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 blah. No, they were very particularly placed in the sequential order for certain reasons that are mostly occulted to general knowledge of the public. In other words, most of the general public have got no idea at all that their language has been deliberately constructed using these kind of reasonings. I'm doing the sarcastic bunny ears on the word reasonings there. There could be some genuine claim to why they are in certain positions, a purpose that benefits us or enables us to do things in a certain way, etc. Or there could just be bogus claims of, well, it makes magic power happen. But it certainly does affect people's thinking, because it affects the way we construct communication, make words, make sentences, etc., etc. And that affects how we convey ideas to each other and how we use ideas in our own mind. Because for the majority of us, when you're thinking about something, you're often thinking in images that you then try to apply words to, because that's what you've been taught to do since early childhood. Your mind works more easily in visual imagery. But then we have this need to define the imagery. Otherwise, it's just a kaleidoscope of light and color. So we have to create definitions so that then we can say, this is a whatever it is that we're defining. We have to draw a box around it to define it. And to do so, we utilize words to create hard barriers. The definitions of words give a definition, a defense, a fence around the thing we're trying to describe. So if you get people to utilize words in a certain way, you literally, not figuratively, you literally affect their ability to think, because they construct their thinking using the words they've been taught. So, number 19, the letter S. Why is it the 19th letter of the English alphabet? Because the 1 and the 9 is the beginning of a decimal system, a base 10. In other words, you go from 0 to 9. That makes a total of 10 digits, and that equals one round, one circle. Yeah, one full circle from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, back to 0 again. And then every other number above 9 is a combination of those beginning 10 digits. So 1 and 0 equals 10. Yeah, it's a base 10 system. In that base 10 system, the 1 and the 9 together mark the beginning and end, the alpha and the omega, the loop that joins. It's where the Ouroboros head is eating the tail, the two sides coming back together to create the full wheel. So the 1 and the 9 is significant to represent that circular effect. And the S is turned on its side, but it still shows the same thing. It represents that oscillation, the sine wave between positive and negative, and the movement of everything between the two. And it's also a split circle. And again, why the 1 in 9? Like the symbol for phi, the Greek symbol for phi, a circle with a line through the middle of it. If you think of that as like you're chopping the circle in half with that line, if that line is your knife of definition, you're chopping the circle in half, and then you move one above the other, you've got an S. So that's why the 1, 9, the S, etc., etc. It's also connected to what I've often mentioned in the past about why I call this show Sol Excalibre. Sol is the whole, the circle, and the Excalibur is your line of definition, the chaos and the order. You put the two together, you have a balance, a combination that is powerful in many different ways. I will come back to that in a second. Just give a quick shout out. I noticed some more people joining the chat room. Where did we get to? About there. Mary T, hello. And the witness, hello, hello. I hope you're witnessing good stuff. Dottie, I said hello to Dottie. Lotsome Tathro, hello, mate. And really graceful, hello, hello. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you still take the time to tune in. It's always good to help, get information out there to people. The more we connect with each other over distance like that. A new being, hello. Glad you made it. And Richard Kinsey, hello, hello. Just scrolling down, at the bottom of the chat room. Sometimes I have to wait for I'm not sure if it's my browser lagging a bit or whether it's the Google effect of stuff lagging a bit, but sometimes it just tends to chunk and you get a bunch of messages all at once. But anyway, sorry, distracted myself. Back to where I was. Okay. So it was, I mentioned in the number 19, episode 19, the letter S, the circle. They're going round in a loop. Yeah, that's circular thinking, mate. You can't live in a loop because that's circular thinking. Hang on. Yeah. You're in a loop, you're in circular thinking. But this connects back to that Phoenix principle. The change I've described it as like changing a chapter. They brought quite a few chapters to a close recently off the back of the equinox. We got too much bright light. Never mind. Sorry, it's not really about me face anyway. I mean, what is there to look at apart from me and my beard and Brucey? Oh, Bruce. Yeah. Sorry if it's a bit bright, but move the video so you don't have to stare at it and just listen. It's the audio that's the most important part. But that connection to the circular, things beginning again. And you've seen a changing chapter, yes, but in effect, things have been reset or begun again. And a lot of that connects into what's been going on this year with the elections, the failure of the so-called Brexit occurring, Theresa May now finally admitting that, yes, she is going to bugger off, which we knew she would all along. Remember the red shoes said this like however long ago, nearly over a year ago, talking about when she first took her position and she made a acceptance speech and she talked about, guaranteeing to carry on with the Brexit process. And she's wearing the red shoes. The red shoes are a mark of a sacrifice. They're an indicator that she's there to just fill a role, do a job. She's going to get sacrificed, but she's just there to keep the handle turning. And she then proceeded to play the can kicking game and keep kicking the can down the road, down the road, down the road. Oh, it's too late now, folks. Now you've got to take part in the European elections again. And oh, by the way, I'm resigning because everybody's so pissed off with me, including my own party, that I'm going to have to fall on my own sword and hand my resignation in. And then you'll have a general election, and the opposition, led by Jeremy Corbyn, is already talking about having a general election, and they're already talking about a second referendum. There's been no official statement on that yet, but they have said officially that they are going to have a vote on whether or not they're going to have a vote. Just makes me think of the life of Brian, the scene where they're all sat around the table and the woman comes running in going, they're getting him now, they've arrested him, they're dragging him up. Oh, we'll have a vote about that. Let's vote on whether we're going to have a vote or not. Do you need to have a vote on the vote that you're going to vote on? Yeah, see what I mean about circular. So that off the back of the equinox, this whole process is going to lead us up to the solstice during the summer, because when May officially resigns and new Tory leader and new election, this is going to take 2-3 months. It's going to be around the time of the solstice. I'm not saying it's definitely going to land on that date, maybe a bit after, but it's going to be around the time of the solstice. So to me, maybe, yeah, okay, I'm happy to accept it could just be my personal perception on how I interpret these coincidences, if you're a coincidence theorist. But I find it no coincidence that these things are occurring on certain times or certain dates or periods where there are these significant astrotheological changes going on. The solar system is in an unusual configuration, not totally unusual, but in terms of our lifetimes, it's beyond our lifetimes. These are cycles that are much bigger than the average human lifespan, unless you believe in biblical accounts of 300-year-old people and whatever. All these things are being noted. The change in the cycles are being officially signified. The fire at the Notre Dame Cathedral being one example. There are other things, and there'll be things that are being done in the background that are either not really major public knowledge or of any major influence, but they're being done in the background following the same kind of patterns. As I put in my notes, May's red shoe dance. Yeah, she's played this dance for the last year and a half of pretending to pursue the request of the citizens that they made with their vote, saying, yes, we want to leave. The vote wasn't, do you want a deal? No, it was, do you want to stay in the EU or do you want to leave the EU? The majority vote was leave. She played this game. She danced this dance, claiming that she was going to do this. She's now stepping down. We're going to have one out, one in, and the circle turns again. This process has been marked in correlation to certain seasonal changes in the year, but also longer cycles that, to all intents and purposes, from what we can see with the available information and data and reasoning, are longer cycles of significance that some in the control structure know about and knew about in advance, but have deliberately kept to themselves because it enables them to keep a power differentiation between them and the general populace, such that you get this pyramidal effect and they can sit on top in the lap of luxury, etc. It's not just about money, but a lot of the infrastructure is influenced by money because it brings them comfort, and all the lap of luxury kind of stuff. So 1 in, 1 out, will more likely be a general election. I think pretty much guaranteed there'll be a general election. And there will most probably be a second vote. And this time, you think it's highly likely they're going to get a, yeah, let's stay in the EU. The EU's fantastic vote. I think they probably will. Hopefully my cynicism is just that, being pessimistically cynical about it, but I'm highly dubious that they will actually ever let the British Isles out of that connection to the European state. That's not the agenda. The agenda requires this area, this geographical area of the planet, to be under one federal control so that it slots into the UN agenda for a globalized world. That's why they're so insistent on the deal. Because if they can come up with some kind of deal, then that populace of the UK that wants Brexit will have an illusion that they have Brexit. So you'll be allowed to wave your flag and your St. George's cross. You'll still have pound currency, maybe not cash, but you'll use the pound symbol on your phone when you're electronically paying for stuff on your social credit system. So you'll have the illusion of being independent, but you'll be contractually obliged to obey the diktats from that federal overarching governmental system in Europe. And that's going to be true across Europe. It's not like they're just picking on the UK because they want to pick on the UK. No, they're putting the same pressure and trying to apply the same idea onto the whole of Europe. That was the purpose designed long ago when a lot of these agendas started. So all of this is getting people re-engaged again in the EU, and that I mentioned this earlier, that idea of, well, there's going to be an EU Parliament, so we better take part. You can't remain neutral on a moving train. I think that was Kissinger, wasn't it? One of Kissinger's quotes: "You can't remain neutral on a moving train." So you have to join in the fight. You have to join in the circus and pick one side versus the other. Whereas you don't exist on one side or the other. One other thing I'll mention in terms of this, because I don't want to rant too long about this EU stuff, but I see a correlation. Not coincidental. I see a correlation in the way they deliberately scripted the end of the Game of Thrones series. I mentioned this last week, and I know I sort of rattled on a bit about this, but I think there is deliberately certain storyline constructs that they carried out. The way they closed off the stories was deliberately meant to coincide with a lot of the political activity that's been happening pretty much around the world, but certainly in the Western world. The NATO allies have been subjected to the same propaganda and mostly the same methodology in how their governmental systems have been messed with, and they're trying to reshape them in one way or another. And the Game of Thrones, at the end, they murder off, they sacrifice the crazy queen. Oh, Theresa May. Can somebody do a video mashup of that and stick Theresa May's face on the crazy queen when he's stabbing her? Yeah. And who's Jon Snow? I did wonder if that might have meant to be Farage. Yeah, you got Farage creating this whole new party and dominating these elections with that new party. He's like Brutus stabbing Caesar. She's the Caesar, she's the dictator. And he's there going, "Oh, no, we're going to have you." Stab. And she has enabled the destruction of the Brexit process by her inaction and a supposed failure, this is going to be blamed on inability to perform the job, basically, which is utter rubbish. This is deliberate sabotage. That's been the whole narrative all along. And I mean sabotage of what the people expected, not necessarily that they're sabotaging their own attempts to create a deal and whatever. They don't need to. The whole process was flawed from the beginning, therefore was never going to achieve anything. It was never going to come to fruition. But no, I mean sabotage as in they've taken this desire, this energy of the public, and they know it's there. They know the majority of the public want something along that lines. Really, they just want out of the connection, and that it's that energy that they're sabotaging to attempt to misdirect it to serve their own political purposes, to keep us in that federal connection. So they do that. They kill off the Queen. She's sacrificed. And then the little council get together at the end of the show, the end of the episode, and they're like, well, we could try democracy. And they all laugh. Then they basically do use democracy, but it's democracy for the elect few because they get to choose. That's what's called an oligarchy. Yeah, the rich, the nobles, those of bloodline who claim authority over others, they get to choose. But all the others, no, you don't get any involvement in the choice that's made of who's going to rule you. But basically, they just turn the handle again. They go back to the same old system that they've been utilizing all along. So the whole process is to kick the can down the road. Yeah, he died and they died and she weren't mad. And but we're just back to the beginning again. And I know I ranted about that kind of point last week. But to me, my perception, I'm seeing correlations of how they're closing off those storylines in that kind of manner. And it correlates to a lot of the stuff that's happening in our political world here, in the Western allies, in the UK and the USA and most of Europe. Deliberate? I think so. Not coincidental. And it seems to be geared towards these significant dates and times and seasonal changes. So that was more about the EU is dead, long live the EU. Like I said, a new EU is born. I want to connect that into another point that I wanted to bring up that, strangely enough, we were talking about before we came on air as well, and it just seemed to be something around at the moment, like a consideration maybe, or just a point that's been raised by other people. I worded it as the littlest giant. I was trying to think of a way of how to describe something that I know I've talked about before, and it does connect with that same kind of foundational principle stuff, like talking about duality and whatever, which I've often done. The littlest giant. It's also a hermetic method of taking two extremes, two polarizations, and joining them back together again, or removing the wall that is the cognitive dissonance that says you can't answer both yes and no at the same time. You can't have the two sides existing at the same time. It's got to be one or the other. It's got to be Conservative or Labour. You've got to pick one side or the other, supposedly, whereas the reality is both sides are existing at the same time. It's just that they're oscillating in position, in their relevance and influence to you, in their prominence in your world. They oscillate in position, but they're both still existing at the same time. The littlest giant. Also with that, it's not just about the dualistic of the two extremes, the two opposite sides doing this dance. For that whole thing to happen, there has to be the middle point. There has to be the fulcrum in the middle that connects them. You take the 2 points, or you take a singular point and split it and stretch it apart to create the two polarizations. Then there is a median point in the middle. The same as when you see a printout or a readout of a sine wave, and you see the oscillation, like I was describing the S earlier. Always on those printouts or on those readouts on the screen or whatever, there'll be the median line. running through the middle that shows you how the two are moving at a distance, you know, so you can calculate how many digits or how many units is that extending in its oscillation. You can call it the average as well, but it's not really accurate. Average is more just a mathematical method, you know, getting an average or getting a median. But it's more about the fact that the only way those two sides dance around each other or oscillate in prominence, in relevance, is because there is a center point that holds them together. They move around that center point. So there are three things involved there. Yeah, the one side, the other side, and the point in the middle. A bit like the Hegelian process, thesis, antithesis, synthesis in the middle. So when you want to get back to a balanced, holistic use of your being, of your ability to reason and think and comprehend and imagine, because that's all part of it as well, to create new thought, then it's all of the 3 points at once. And to try and explain why I use that terminology of the littlest giant. This is more to try and explain a connection to and a reference to the concept of time. Because things in the past seem gigantic in their influence on what's going on in the world. You know, the powers that be claim they've always been the powers that be. Since time immemorial, they've had claim to authority in one way or another. That makes them seem gigantic in proportion, that they are unassailable because they have existed for so long. And that's talking about kind of like the realm of man, you know, people making claims about things and power structures that don't necessarily actually exist in any physical sense. They're all required. They require a cognitive acceptance, as I've described it before. You know, the nation state is a state of mind. It is a nation state of mind. The nation does not exist. It is a thing in your mind that you agree to. And in agreement, you order your life to match the boundaries of that definition that you've been told equal the nation. But the thing itself, the description of it, it does not exist in reality. But things from the past also of just the universe around you, what people refer to as physical material. The planet is gigantic compared to you, the solar system, the universe. There is a lot of giantism in the past. You could also make reference to the claims of giants living in the ancient past and the Nephilim and stuff like that. There's something about the way the past influences us, influences our thinking, and affects daily life in the present. I describe it as being like a giant. It has this immense presence that affects everything that comes after it. What you've done in the past can affect what is going on for you in your current time. Consequences, yeah. If you set fire to your house yesterday, then today you've got no house to shelter it. Yeah, that's a giant effect on your life. I know it's a bit of an extreme example, but hopefully you get what I'm trying to impress here. The influence of the past is so immense on what's happening now that it's like the power of a giant pressing down on you, or, you know, bashing down on you. But you are there compared to that giant. You seem quite small. Yeah, but to somebody just ahead of you, you think, you project your thinking into the future, because that's what we can do with our thinking. You project your thinking into the future, and that would mean you are now part of the past. So if you look back again, you become one of the giants. And the further back in the past you go, the bigger you get. Like looking in a mirror, you know, two mirrors facing each other, and the further back that image repetition goes, the bigger and bigger it gets, the more influence it potentially has. You might lose resolution a little bit as it gets further and further away in your vision. These are metaphysical, metaphorical things. So physical constraints don't count. But the more you project into the future, the finer that point of attention becomes, because you're stretching further and further and further, which requires a level of information combined with imagination that you predict where you're going to be in the future. You know, somebody who's really good at astronomy can look at what's happening in the sky, can make some calculations and go, yeah, in 24 hours time, that star is going to be there. So they're making a prediction about the future. They're extending their mind into the future and saying that is going to look different tomorrow because I can calculate the movements and it's going to be this and that's going to be there. You can also speculate using creative thinking, imagination to go, oh, well, I've got this bit of data and I've got that bit of data. And if these things keep going the way they're going, then we're going to end up at that result. The further and further you extend your thinking into the future, the finer and finer that reach becomes. So it gets smaller and smaller and smaller in a metaphorical sense. So you end up again, like I said, if you project into the future and then turn and look around behind you, things seem bigger and bigger and bigger in scale, like you're looking up at a pyramid kind of thing. Why am I talking about all that? Past, present, future. There's also the power of three in all of this that I'm trying to describe. What I was saying earlier as well, that's the power of three in that. Your thinking is capable of being in the past, present, and future all at once. You acquire memories as you go through your experience of the now, something that happened now. You remember it, and tomorrow you can recall it and go back to visit it. So you can exist in the present and the past at the same time. Oh yeah, I'm sat here now, but I'm thinking about something that happened in the past. We can argue endlessly about whether that is just, you're just thinking about it. You're not actually going back in time. Yeah. It gets into silly arguments about time and stuff like that. But the point is, in your mind, that's what I'm talking about. In your mind, you can exist in both points at once. And you can also do the same into the future. So you don't just exist in the now, you're in a mixture. You're in a point of that sine wave where you oscillate. For a little bit, you're remembering what you did yesterday or 10 years ago or whatever. You're remembering something good or bad, or that you're visiting a memory, you're in the past. But to do that visiting in the past, you are actually in the moment now. You might forget your environment for a minute in your daydreaming, remembering the past, but you are actually here. Your mind is here. You're taking notice of things, even if you're not necessarily directly aware of them. And the same when you're imagining into the future. So you don't really exist in one or the other. You exist in all three at the same time. In the same way as you don't just exist on the left or the right of the political bullshit theatre. You are taking part in all three at the same time. You might be preferring one side or another based on their policies. If you agree with all that political stuff, and you might be supporting one side over the other. You might be on an extreme polarization of you think the other side shouldn't exist at all, but it does exist. The very fact that you want it to not exist means it is existing. Therefore, there is that dualistic polarization still. And you are thinking about the other side while you're on its opposition. So you're in both sides at the same time. And you have to go through that line. You have to walk along that line, crossing the middle point to get to the other side. So you're in all three positions again, all at once. One of the biggest tricks this system utilizes against us all, and I say all because even the people, a lot of the people working in the system aren't aware of some of this kind of stuff. They're just going along to get along, blah, 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 climbing the ladder, all that kind of shit. But one of the biggest things that they use against us is that principle of the delusion. They give you the illusion and they feed it that you are separate in those environments, that you can only be on one or the other. Even when you're trying to dance down the middle, they say, oh, well, you're middle ground, middle of the road politics. You don't truly agree with one side or the other, so you're going down the middle. So that's yet another definition of separation. They're separating you from those other two sides. But your middle ground wouldn't exist without those other two sides. So in other words, again, you're in all three positions. They want you to separate yourself in that way. Do you live only in the past? Are you the kind of quite vehement conservative that thinks we should go back to how we used to live in the 19th century, you know, and all the things that went along with that, whatever, or even further back? You know? Do you live in the past in the sense of you're constantly reliving things that you've already done, whether they're good or bad, and that's all you want to do is be in that past time? That serves their purpose. That's why they feed us nostalgia constantly. Do you remember how great it was during the war? Do you remember how we all pulled together in the war? Those kind of adversities give people a sense of being drawn together, because in a physical way, they require working together to survive the adversity. But they utilize that. And in the same way, do you want to imagine what it's going to be like in the future? Do you want to plug yourself in? Do you want to have yourself digitally downloaded? Live in the future in your mind. In your mind, you're always looking to that horizon. You're always chasing that tiny point of light on the horizon that you're never going to reach because it's on the horizon. The reason I wanted to mention this is because that change of chapter that's occurring, I feel pretty strongly at the moment, these summer months through the solstice, I think is going to be some of the more significant changes that are going on, or events that might occur. But it's been all of this year, really, the 19th, the 1-9 again. All of this stuff that they're propagating at the moment is an attempt to push people into polarized extremes. I've described before that one of my interpretations of why Trump was selected for the USA was because he would talk about building a wall, which he won't do. But what he's actually about, what his narrative is about, and the agenda that he's been servicing is to create psychological walls in the populace, so that he gets people to push themselves further and further and further apart. Because the bigger distance you've got on those polarized points, the stronger the motion can be in the center. Yeah, the longer you make that line, the higher the oscillation can be and declination. Yeah. The variance gets bigger in correlation to the longer you make the line. Yeah, it creates like a cross, a crux, a croy. The crossing point, I know this is getting more and more esoteric, maybe, and reaching further and further into things like astrotheology, but I think it's more retrogrades happening this year than there has been for a long time, according to some people. And there's been some significant correlations with those retrogrades, like multiple retrogrades happening at the same time. And I know Gary's often brought this point up. We've mentioned it a few times in the past in previous shows about, you know, currently it's Mercury retrograde and things like that. This could be part of that crossing point process and connects into much deeper and older agendas and narratives that are about major cyclical changes that occur on this planet, that certain people have an awareness of, and they utilize and manipulate against everybody else and to benefit themselves and their own. So when they're pushing all this stuff about the EU and the Brexit, and you got to pick one side or the other and all that usual kind of shit. And I've often said in the past, like, you know, be in the middle ground somewhere, because it's usually in the middle ground that you find the most truth. Because the two extreme sides will always manipulate and malform the truth to serve their biases. So if you look in between the two, you find most of the truth in the middle. You know, you got your government versus the other governments around the world, and they're both going to be telling you different stories. Somewhere in between is the truth. So if you want to get a better picture of what's going on out in the world, you don't just watch your own governmental propaganda, because that's what the mainstream is to the vast degree. 99.9% of mainstream media is influenced by or is directly governmental propaganda. So like the BBC is the state propaganda arm of the British government. Yeah, so in between the two, because they're working against each other, therefore they'll malform the truth to suit their political or other biases. So in the middle, you find most of the truth. And that, again, is that power of three. You don't exist in just one side or the other, or even just in the middle. It requires all three positions to be holistically you and your part in it. I could extend that further as well, talking about the power of three, things like the father, mother, child, stuff like that. And yeah, past, present, future, etc., etc. I'll let you contemplate on that for yourselves, and there's plenty of stuff out there for you to dig into if you're interested in those kind of things. But the mind can occupy all three different positions. You have the ability to do that. We all have the ability to do that, barring injury or diseases or problems with your biology, etc. The human mind has the ability to occupy all three positions at once. It actually requires it, even though the construct of the mind builds itself, and we were talking about this just off air, hopefully we'll get back into it a bit. The mind builds itself in simple divisions, binary divisions, on or off. Yeah, the way the neural structure is built, I know I'm simplifying it a bit, but the processes that take place, the chemical processes and the movement of that little electric spark is either on or off. It's a binary system. But in that binary system, for there to be those two branches, there has to be a root. Yeah, there has to be a center point to create the two branches. So it's not one or the other. It's both sides, truly. But to enable your thinking, you have to have the ability to say it's yes or no. That ability then gives you the ability to create definitions, create order, signify differences between one thing and another, because otherwise it would all just be kaleidoscope of light and color craziness. So I thought it was important to mention that again at the moment with this crazy bank holiday weekend. Hello, everyone. You've got to join in the parliamentary game again by taking part in the EU elections. Well, hey, no. No, thank you. I will use my thinking for other things. Thank you very much. I've been thinking about things like that, the power of three in reference to that. The heart is the engine. The mind is the calculating box. And the spiritual energy is the source for all that process to take place. You occupy all three positions at once, not one separately. You're not just all here in your brain. You're not just heart only. You're not just emotion only. You're not just in intellect only. Yeah, all that good stuff. I think at that point, it's fairer for me to say hello to the other guys and let you join in if you want. I know I've done me, about an hour ranting, and I think I've said pretty much what I wanted to say in my kind of way. I usually remember other stuff as we go along, but that's why it works like that.
Oh, interest. Sorry, Cooking. Just clean my throat.
So I'm going to wake you up.
Yeah, yeah. I was miles away. No, I was listening.
Do I need to give you an MK Ultra jolt?
No, I was listening. Seriously, no.
I'll send you a shock through your brain set now.
Yes, I have made many notes. So no, yeah, no, good stuff. The vote. I mean, the stuff going on over here with the political stuff, the EU. Just seeing the misuse of everything again, misuse of energy. or in the political terms, the abuse that goes on. We've got Farage, like you say, coming along again, doing his thing, and possibly another election, all that chaos, order out of chaos.
He's fueled by milkshake.
Yeah, so delay the process, keep delaying it, wear us down, then revote. The system vested interests like the Crown and others and all the rest of them. And the new norm is, of course, proportional representation. So once you've picked the side, like you say, in the middle there's just a whole load of mess and shit and people arguing constantly because there's no clear person in charge. So that's how they want it, dealing with the mess in the middle. But yeah, and the other stuff, I mean, that was when it gets good at the end, doesn't it? That's stuff I'm into, and the energy shifts and stuff like that. I've noticed that. I mean, we said it since the beginning of this year. It's like the truth is coming around. The universe brings whatever it brings, and the energy shifts. People change. There's the shift in yourself. There's people will be like I say, can't deny what's real in that sense. Your brain and binary system, when it comes to a sort of, if you think about when you came to a sort of truth or something that you didn't know, or you were led to believe it was something else, and then you found out it wasn't, and you kind of knew anyway, and in yourself, and it was like remembering again, and something happens to your brain again. It almost, like you say, that system then sets off a little chain reaction, and boom, 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 and all these other neurons start firing as well, or whatever you want to call them, and it seems to sort of light your brain up a bit. It's like a light coming on, the light, the truth, the peace, the harmony in your life starts to get better. You start to flow better with the right information, the right knowledge, because that's what it's about.
I think of them like switches. It's like every fact is either like true or false, and each one's got a little finger switch.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get a whole row of them go at the same time. Click, click. That was wrong, and so was that, and then that means that was wrong as well. Click, 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 click.
Yeah.
And you feel so much better afterwards. You think, God damn, it's almost like an intellectual splinter, believing something that's wrong when you find out. Yeah, you think, oh, good, that's gone. Right, okay, now I've got it straight.
I think it's that, like the energy comes from that stepping. I was going to say stepping up, but that implies a direction up and down, whatever. But maybe stepping outside of that binary yes, no, click, click effect, and seeing it as, and I'm using jargon deliberately here just because I know people will get what I mean then, even though it's not strictly accurate and whatever. But like you get like a quantum effect instead, rather than it just being binary of yes or no. You have the quantum ability to say it could be no, or yes, or no, or both. So you've now got 4 options, not just 2. Yeah.
I was just
that's in the way I was trying to describe the 3 positions. If nothing exists there at all, that's what would be considered null. In other words, it is a nothing result when it's questioned. But if there's the 3 positions there, that's the other 3 points that make it the 4 choices. Yeah, it can be yes, no, or both in the middle.
Or there's another way of just standing back from the thing, and instead of deciding on which one is right, ask yourself about the person that's making the declaration. What do they do? What's their interest here? What's their motivation? Yeah. Like Theresa May and Farage, and he's working for bankers. Maybe what might be his interests.
Context.
Well, if they're coming from the wrong place and they're misusing it or abusing it, then they'll get their karma, so to speak, in that sense. It just comes round. It's the way it works. If your intentions are not good and they're tainted with toxic thoughts or toxic stuff, like Trump's trying to, like you say, psychologically plant things into people's heads and get them to think psychologically about walls in their heads and God knows what else they try and do. And cause this cognitive or dissonance and whatever all the time. It just seems to me that this is where we've got to, and this is what we're doing. Making people see that and see what they're doing. It's not. It's to me they misuse it so much it just becomes the norm. It's that bit in the middle, you see. It's not. That's what you're talking about. The bit in the middle. You've got the use, the misuse, and then the abuse. Yeah. So it's the bit in the middle. Most people are there. They're misusing a lot of things, and the real bastards, the real abusers, as we know, are existing. But the majority of people are stuck with that, you know, in the middle bit. It's the using good energy, using it in the correct way. You know, just being a good fucking person. You know, just doing the right thing. And because we all know when we're doing right and wrong. We know that. You do know that. You know, you're conscious being, for goodness sake. You know when you're doing right and wrong. As soon as you get to certain ages and things like this, you know what you're doing. You're not. You know, you can't sort of, unless of course your brain is mashed up or you're mentally whatever. But the majority of us do know what we're doing, and this misuse of it, it's kind of said the grey area. I know, you know, people talked about that in the past. You know, the grey area and the shades, yeah. And that's the bit that most people are there. They don't realize they're there. They go to work every day. We do these things every day. We treat, you know, we've got our bosses, or we're a boss ourselves, and we're there giving out orders, and you know, we're misusing it. We're not thinking, and most people are there in that middle bit.
That as well has been abused by the system to create a miscomprehension, a misunderstanding. I'd rather say miscomprehension. That you get that kind of tumble down effect, because the brain fart steals the words out of your head and ejects them somewhere. Where do they go? Sorry, remind me what you just said.
Yes, in the middle with the misuse of energy or misuse of your power, or you know, most people don't realize they're actually doing that.
But in a sense,
being in the middle, thinking that your thought process is progressing along that middle ground, like the shades of grey, and it can create a misunderstanding that is enabled and propagated by the system itself, because it serves their purpose in various ways, that everything is relative, everything is shades of grey. Yeah, so in other words, it's like morality is relative. There can be no right and wrong, or there is no scientific fact, because everything is relative. These are all problematic pit traps in thinking that can lead people to, you know, bad conclusions or just crazy thinking. Let me finish that. But that miscomprehension is fueled because people think the relativity is all that there is, that the shades of grey is all that there is. But that is a deliberate, like, misfiring of thinking, because for there to be shades of grey, there has to be black and white, because that's how you get shades of grey. You have black at one end, white at the other, and you spread it in between the two. And in between the two is the shades of grey. For something to be relative, something else has to be absolute. Yeah, these simple hermetic principles again. For there to be relativity, there has to be something absolute for that other bit to be relative to. Yeah.
But that's giving the sleeping people the excuse to stay asleep.
Yes.
Let me put it this way. I think it's possible that staying asleep is the greatest sin, because the people who have chosen bad will do bad. And like Pete said, you know, karma will catch up with them. But it won't catch up with them properly until more people are awake. And they, like you said, Theresa May, oh, she'll go off now and she'll do business. She'll never be happy. Her conscience, you know, it might not torture her, but she won't sleep at night, and she'll be up busy. And, you know, the devil finds work for idle hands. And these people become mechanically addicted to their material gains. Now, that has its own punishment. In just being in that mindset, yeah. But the only way they can continue doing that, and it doesn't catch up with them, is in when a lot of people stay asleep to it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That, I don't want to stretch too far into the esoteric, but that could be argued as being the process back towards the Godhead, and how. And I know I've described it this kind of way many times. Past this, the physicality of materialism is the density that slows down your frequency from going up. You know, in the kind of Jacob's ladder metaphor, Yeah, that density is the weight, the
Yeah,
gravity that pulls
that,
you back down.
now that is the other point I wanted to make, because that kind of density that the trees and mazes of this world have, also usually I think there is a divine law that it puts a block on the amount of intelligence and understanding that people who are going in that direction can have. But we seem to see exceptions to that because there are so many people asleep. So the powers that shouldn't be, they're getting absolute computer control of everything. They've got a vast intelligence at their fingertips. Like, evil people shouldn't have that. If you're bad and you're choosing bad all the time, you shouldn't be able to have that much intelligence. But you know, they're taking what the sleeping people aren't using. If you see what I mean. So
Yeah.
the more people wake up, the less they're going to have.
Yeah.
And also, as an addendum to that, a lot of people waking up. There was only 17 million people when they voted the European Union elections. So a lot of people have woken up at least to the fact that it's not worth voting anyway. But you know, there's a long way to go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. I think though, some of those numbers could have been that pure, maybe not purely, but certainly heavily influenced by the angry reaction of a lot of the populace who originally voted for the Brexit. Yeah, that's why that Farage Brexit party has just like jumped right to the front, because most of the populace is that pissed off with this whole process, this whole situation, that they're like, oh right, there's European elections and Farage is doing, but yeah, I'll get out there, I'll go, I'll make the effort because I'm that pissed off.
We're going to have so much voting again, aren't we? I mean, you said before, vote on a vote to leave. You know, it just seems, here we go again, guys. You know, we just had, was it 2-3 years ago, we had a lot of voting, and it doesn't seem to sort of change much. If anything, nothing, just more chaos, like you say. And it's just, it's not going to change. And we've got all the people now standing up to now be the new leader of the Tories. We've seen, I think it's that Javid's, what's his name?
Javid,
yeah, I can't remember his name, but he's chucked his hat in the ring now, and a few others, Boris. And like you say, we're going to have a general election. Is it going to be between Corbyn or Farage, the general election? Is it going to be that much of a, you know, he's going to come out and do something, isn't he? Because now he's got the Brexit party and he's got his ka-ching, you know, money trail going as well. Could it be the next sort of, I mean, Trump likes him, you know?
As far as I know, now that Farage has got himself elected into the European Parliament, I don't think he can stand to run for Prime Minister. He'd have to resign the European one, I think. As far as I know, that's how it would work. He can't do both at the same time.
Well, he did say the other day that he was going to be the shortest MEP known in history. That was obviously saying to this French journalist about, you know, why you're doing, you know, this, because you're coming out of the, you know, of the EU. And it was like, well, yeah, we just have to go through the process because it's all a mess, and that's all we're doing. So I'll be the shortest MEP in history, and he walked away, and that was what he said to this guy. So that could be something else, but yeah, I do think, yeah, it's all playing out the way we said how it would. We're not leaving the EU; we're still in it. We will remain in it, and all this has just been one big chaotic, you can say, order out of chaos type event. Shed a few leaders or a few people that you didn't like anyway in that process, and it's all Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they sapping up all people's energy to participate in the governance of their society. In other words, oh, you want to get involved? Well, here you go, here's a bit of paper, put an X on one side or the other. You know, the voting principle. They're using that to soak up all the energy of people. Meanwhile, they're doing things like rolling out 5G. You know, it's just being done. There's no testing. There's no real questions of do you want it or not. It's just being done anyway. And on the back of that, that includes things like the Agenda 21 requirement to have every home with a smart meter by 2021. You know, supposedly they're still on track to achieve that, to the point now. I was listening to Scott Webb earlier, who's looking at some newspaper articles like he does. He's talking about one where British Gas is charging people an extra £300 a year if you don't have a smart meter.
Don't use British Gas.
Yeah, now they're really starting to crank that financial pressure handle to mean that agenda of getting them all replaced by 2021. They're trying to achieve it seriously. And I know people might think, oh, it's just a meter. What does it matter? You know, but if you look into it, you'll find there's a lot more going on there. And it's the fact that, as I say, they're doing this sort of under the radar almost of, they tell the general populace, the media that they put out gives this idea that, oh yeah, you know, everybody's having these new smart meters because they're saving money and they're great and they're wonderful and we need to save the planet and all this kind of stuff. But they're not really letting you know that this is all linked in to that Internet of Things, 5G infrastructure that will basically turn your environment, your social environment, into even more of an electronic prison. If you don't think it is already, it is pretty much an open prison as it is. But this kind of infrastructure, this kind of technology that they're setting up, including things such as the smart meters, is making it pretty much outright just, yeah, it's spread out across the size of a nation state, but the structure itself is the same as what you would call a prison. There will be control systems to prevent you moving, exchanging goods,
and with
everything.
And with the corrupt councils who manage that process through that level, at local level, it gets pushed out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And as we know, all the councils are corrupt.
Yeah. But your two main concerns, your two puppets, your Punch and Judy, that they want you to look at, is either the fictional political conflict of something like Game of Thrones, or the supposedly real world contest of political shit that's going on, the elections, the Brexit, the blah blah blah,
or Extinction Rebellion, the sort of
yeah.
I mean, you mentioned that, but I was listening to that Windows on the World today, and he was talking about corrupt councils and stuff like that, and they mentioned back in 2014. Do you remember when was it Somerset? A lot of Somerset got flooded for weeks, and no one came and helped. No environment agency there, nothing. And this has all been planned. That was all part of a plan that had been set out since as early as the 70s or something, which was to make wetlands and areas in certain parts of the world good for nature and things like this. So people weren't even made aware, you know, that this has even been happening. And then they didn't dredge was it the riverbeds or the rivers or whatever, the canals and things. So when we had in that time, I think 2012, 13, 14, we seemed to have an awful lot of rain. I remember it was a lot of flooding in the UK, and that 2 to 3 year period, it seemed to be, you know, constant.
It's a conclusion, was it solar cycle 21, I think? 21 and 22, and it was when I think it had gone over the edge and we'd started the slow decline in the cycle.
And then for some reason, some guy in Leeds left the sluice gates open and flooded the centre of Leeds. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
And that was weird. Yeah, that was strange.
Seems
rewilding.
Well, again, all these things that were already there. If you know, but we're not told about them. You know, people don't go and, you know, look for this type of thing because they think, again, trusting the environment agencies and these sorts of official bodies that are there to look after things for us, and that's what they do. And no, there's another agenda hidden away, and then, you know, that's proof of it back then when you go and look at that story back in 2014, 15, and, you know, this was just another example of, like, Agenda 21, like you mentioned, now to Agenda 2030. You know, they just want to, you know, another 10 years. You know, we're nearly at 21 now, aren't we? So not far off.
Technically 12 years, which very nicely correlates to Extinction Rebellion's claims that we've only got 12 years left. Oh, what a coincidence. Not.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, so they don't mind destroying people's properties. The people, again, just clearing us out. Like we said before, this kind of push towards living in cities or smart cities that they're trying to set up and experiment with. I talked about one in Toronto last week, which we're trying to set up, or there was some opposition. So, you know, people are, you know, can see through this now. They can see through things. People, you know, are not buying it. There is opposition, but as you mentioned with 5G, it's been actually it's I think next month, is it, or month after July?
This summer, I know.
It's been switched on in the UK in all the cities. It's going to be, you know, the big switch on. I wonder if Boris Johnson's going to turn up and, you know, put his hand in the 5G antenna.
I have to
Well,
purchase a bulk supply of oven mitts. You know, the kind of heat-proof oven mitt. So that then when all the people come running out the cities with their hairs on fire, you know, we can pat them out with our oven mitts.
Yeah, it's more the psychological, or what's called the slow effect, because they look
mind bending.
Yeah,
the two main things that to me stand out the most about that technology as it's developed over the years and become now 5G is the genetic biological effect of that constant saturation in those what are basically alien frequencies, because they're artificially generated. That has been like an agitation effect on our biology. To a certain degree, your system, your immune system and whatever can cope with it through constant repair. Yeah. But as the amount of frequencies and the level of them has gone up and up and up, then there's been this decline in health in the population, and people reporting the same kind of problems, like the rise in diabetes, the rise in things like fibromyalgia, nervous system, electrical, yeah. But also the way it subtly affects people's thinking. And if you think it doesn't, then you're ignorant of the technology, because it's well established scientific fact that frequencies can affect people's thinking. The more extreme the frequencies, the more extreme the effects, to the point that people will claim that they've been somewhere else completely different. They've been in another fucking dimension, because in their head, they've been hallucinating to such an extreme that they have an out-of-body experience. That can be done with just frequency technology. And that is the kind of stuff that, even though, you know, it's not technically exactly the same as the example I'm referencing, but they can do that kind of stuff with this technology. So if they set up this whole infrastructure, there can be this very low level, slow beating pulse that affects your thinking. It could slow you down. It could agitate you. It could make you emotional. It could make you careless, as in you just couldn't give a fuck, like a sedative. Yeah, all this kind of stuff can be done with this frequency technology.
I was going to say as well, though, just to sort of go to propaganda. You know, most people are under the propaganda spell, aren't they? It just at that level, you know, they believe in all this. That's why this stuff's being rolled out so easily. You know, with the propaganda and the lies and the usual corporate, you know, spin and, you know, lights and
the control
and all
the control of the institutional bodies involved as well.
Yeah.
So they control not the ombudsman, they're like the watchdogs that are supposed to set the standards for the industries and stuff like that. They control all that shit.
Yeah.
So they're setting the standards at known dangerous levels, and then they can legitimately stand at a press conference and say, yeah, it's perfectly safe, there's no health effects ever reported, we know there's no health effects. Yeah, because they're the ones writing the fucking reports.
Exactly. And
they're the ones setting the standards that are breaching the known danger levels.
Some people out there still believe the BBC are telling the truth.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, scientists say
it's relative.
Experts reveal, you know, it's the usual shit you get out the mainstream. But yeah, that's the spell a lot of people are still under, you know, or they're still being fooled by it, should I say. They are sort of getting it, but then these stories can sidetrack them or sideswipe them off somewhere else or take them down a rabbit hole. And they're very good at that as well, with the psychological ops they pull on everybody. We've seen that with the other, you know, shit that's been around with flat Earth and all the crap we've had to deal with over the past few years, trying to, you know, send everybody crazy in the environment of trying to get to some truth and some harmony, you know, and some, you know, sensible and, you know, maturity of people and start to sort of, you know, grow up a bit, you know, like the 21st century, you know, are we just 21, just into some old stuff? Yeah, it's like it's you know, we just like kids still playing, you know. We come into the age of, you know, can we get beyond this? Can we see that these people, these very small group of people, are just doing some horrible, toxic things to our minds, bodies, souls, and the planet and everything. You know, they're doing some awful stuff to us, and we can see through it. Most of us, I think, can. It's just that you know, the system they set up so strong and powerful that keeps us locked in, you know, through the money system, and that's what makes it so difficult for everybody to, you know, like change things, or because they're stuck in the, again, they're harnessing our energy, they're using us, and we're economic slaves or whatever, you know, on the conveyor belt, you know,
I'm
hamster
pretty
wheel, should I say?
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that you've seen it. I seem to remember we talked about it before, but I was just going to reference people again to that the Great Mortgage Swindle.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it is, I was going to say, it's pretty well known, some of it now, but I don't know whether it is. You know, it might be well known sort of in this kind of part of YouTube, but that doesn't mean it's known by the general populace.
Mm.
Yeah, but the sheer endemic level of fraud and corruption and manipulation that is in the financial industry, but also it leads into the judicial infrastructure, because the financial system couldn't get away with what they've been doing without the backing of government and the judiciary to support them and tell the public, yes, this is all legal and above board, just sign the paper, get on with it. Yeah? So it's that level of deception that is there's no way you could claim that it's to the benefit of the people, you know, we're just tricking them a bit to help them. No, this is outright malicious deception to exploit people, and like you say, the way, you know, just treating you as a source of energy that they can profit out of.
And that's evident with what I've seen the last few more 10 years or so, that stupefying of people, the stupid stuff, you know, the daft shit, you know, that they sort of push on you, you know, the comedy that's not very funny, you know, or the you know, just the banal, you know, it's just not very interesting stuff, and people getting like hooked on, you know, daft memes and stuff like that, and that's then, you know, yeah, and all that. You see a lot of it, and you know,
argument porn.
Yeah, that's why
I believe in the puppet on the left. Well, you're a fucking dumb shit. I support the puppet on the right, and I'm gonna hate you.
I mean, I laugh at, as in, that's what I laugh at. I laugh at that. That makes me, because it's how people have been taken along so easily, and then their money drained off them so easily, and you know, this type of thing. And that's you know, these guys sit back, these corporations, and they quite happily blame us because we're so daft. We can't see it, and the Extinction Rebellion mob can't see it. You know, that it isn't us at all. We're not a scourge on the planet. Thank you very much. It's like, it's so, you think about what the sort of mindset of these fucking evil bastards are to get you to believe that you're a fucking scourge on the planet. I mean, this planet's huge. This planet cleanses itself. We're not at all like that. So this is the type of thinking that these people have. And they've infected a lot of people, you know, like I say, the Extinction Rebellion lot, all the rest of them. You know, the climate is this, the climate change stuff or the climate control is not climate control. It's control of you, the individual, and what you're doing and what you're being allowed to do each day of your normal life. And it's a much bigger picture. And this is why they love to promote this stuff, because it pushes that fear, like you say, it pushes it to the max. So we have to do something now. And little Greta rolls out, and with you know, with that strange sort of speech stuff she does, you know.
Well, I've mentioned before that
and freaks a lot of people out.
they see a lot of virtues as weakness, right?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people do care about what's happening, pollution and that. They're the ones. Not only have they been steered, but then, so why is it that they're so easily tricked into feeling guilty themselves? How is it that the elites have seen a virtue, wanting to care, and automatically been able to turn it into guilt? Now, this is something that people ought to be able to see through. If that was a real caring emotion, it would deny the guilt. It would say, no, look, you know, I care. That's doing something. I'm not going to feel guilty for it.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of the sort of big tricks of the?
But it's a buffer. It's a buffer, isn't it? That I was describing in that video, how they get people to care on the one hand, and then switch through a little bit of stupidity, and then start feeling guilty for it. They're feeling guilty for caring. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, exactly right. But
How
it's
do we
also,
get people past that contradiction? Yeah.
it's gaslighting.
Yeah.
Because the kind of guilt you're describing is not something that has occurred genuinely in a natural way from that person's own actions and interactions, etc. It's a false guilt that's been impressed upon them and then manipulated by an abuser.
Because he's lying to you. He's lying. They're not telling you the truth. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's how
So
they get the reaction, because they're not telling you the fucking truth.
I was trying to think of a kind of way to example it. Is like that image of the BBC as being the auntie. You know, she's auntie to the nation. She's that loving auntie that turns up and just does nice things for you, bakes you a cake and talks about tea and jam and likes to sit out in the garden and say how wonderful their little cottages in the countryside of England, all that kind of romanticized imagery. Yeah, let me finish. That kind of, that creates, especially in a young mind, you know, I'm using myself as a kind of example here, my experience growing up as a kid. In a young mind, that creates that kind of almost maternal imagery, iconography, archetype in your mind that then later on, when you find out that in some way you have angered that auntie. So say, for example, the BBC puts out some report about people who live on benefits, and you take that as being like, that's like your auntie having a go at you. So hang on a minute, you're giving me all this sensation of being caring, and you have this maternal nature of being wanting to care for the nation, of the people of the nation, while at the same time you keep telling us about how awful we are. So it's like your auntie who says she loves you, but then keeps telling you off for being a nasty person all the time. Your auntie tells you that you're a nasty person, even though you, as far as you can tell, you've done nothing wrong. You just walked in the house. Yeah, that's gaslighting. Yeah, the guilt is not real. It's manufactured and then manipulated by the abuser.
Yeah. And I tell you, it seems to me that people sitting on their couch, just watching the mainstream media, they're in an emotional place of a swamp. They're basically sitting in a swamp of all the negative emotions. And one of the important ones is self-pity. Now, the people watching television don't want to feel self-pity. So what does the television do? It allows you to transfer that pity to somebody else. But it's still pity. I mean, I know this. You know, I sit there and beg, and I know when people are transferring their self-pity onto me. And it's still a negative emotion. You know, it's very different from being concerned or caring or, you know, just generous or whatever. Yeah, and the television does that. You know, it's not going to have people sitting there in self-pity, because that's self-destructive, and it would turn the people in on themselves. So they transfer the pity onto somebody else. Oh, look at the poor children in Africa. They must sit there with their crocodile tears, and it's that's my self-pity, but it's okay because I've transferred it to somebody else. Now that can lead on, to the guilt and things like that. Yeah,
that again is another element of gaslighting, because they present you the opportunity to alleviate that sense of self-pity that they've engendered in you. And what they offer you is a controlled choice that serves, again, their agenda to further manipulate you. So, like, you know, the example you use, you know, here's the starving kid in Africa. Don't you want to help him to make yourself feel better? You contribute to that. And that whole infrastructure then enables another form of gaslighting, not only on the population of the people in Africa, but again, reflected back onto you who gave to the charity in the first place. Because it doesn't solve the problem, it perpetuates it, it makes it worse. Yeah, so like I say, it's another further part of gaslighting to make you feel that it's your fault. You're the one that's the bad person.
And it's tied in as well to the fact that we never see real victims in false flags or, you know, even, you know, real events. We never actually see the victims anymore, or their relatives, if you see what I mean, because you're not allowed to see real emotion, because it might remind you all emotions must be those fake, false emotions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And certainly they'll show people, but yeah, I'd agree with you. The majority of the people they show are dubious, probably actors, and they're presenting a certain kind of presentation, so they might be pretending to have an emotion. It's not genuine.
That's why I was going to say, that's why you can have so many people on this Extinction Rebellion bandwagon. Supposedly they've got good hearts and they mean well, but they've just absolutely got no clue about what real caring feels like even. So they're so easily steered because they've been pre-primed by the mainstream media not to have any real emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And they've kind of got the spark of a real emotion, and they say, well, that's going to lead to you being arrested, or the pity, or self-pity, where the virus, or whatever. Transfer it somewhere else, but keep it negative. Keep it one of those fake emotions above all else, yeah? Because, I'll just finish off this bit. We find... something, you have to focus that energy and turn it into research or something.
Can you say like 30 seconds again, because you're breaking up a little bit? Like about the last 30 seconds of what you were saying was a bit interrupted.
Is he still there? Gary?
Yeah, he's getting a shitty connection.
He's still there? Yeah, he is.
Well, now it's probably about a minute. About the last minute worth of what you were saying, right, has been interrupted.
Yeah, just repeat what you said.
These people are just not allowed to have any real emotions like caring and that. Yeah, it has to all be false. Yeah, because what was I saying? In the truth movement, you start getting angry and you start getting really concerned about what's going on. You have to learn to focus that energy.
Yeah.
Turn it into research or something. And these people haven't got a clue. What can they do with their caring? They do, but they've got no idea themselves how to put one center with another. Mix the emotion with some real intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
They're clueless, really. But emotion is what is going to trigger them. Eventually, they're going to find a real emotion, and they're going to see how much of what they've been told is contradicting that.
Well, as I said before, these these sort of events like Brexit, for instance, will wake a lot of people up from that political paradigm. I think they're stuck in, thinking that their system, as we call it, or these guys rocking up and voting every 4 or 5 years, or what it seems now. When was the last election? Only about 3 years ago. So I think was it 3 years ago? Something
4.
Like was it 4? So we're due one anyway. But yeah, anyway, we do this time and time again. We turn up, we do the thing. People think it's going to make a difference, and then Pied Pipers come along and convince you voting's a load of rubbish, and then they turn you back into a voter. So there's that kind of stuff goes on. So we've seen that happen. So
it's almost a little bit like a karmic process. You go off for a little dance, you go around, you do your dance, and then lo and behold, you come back to that realization again.
It's get in the ballot box. So we just see it come around. So it's interesting times. That's all I'm saying. I think, and you see what's going on. You listen to other people. You think for yourself. That's what's more important. You take ideas or you take other people's thoughts and whatever, and you can see what's going on in the real world as well. If you get out and about and you do, you see what's going on. It's a world of fucking shit, isn't it? But we'll get through it.
It's also a world of roses.
Keep shining your light. That's all I always say. Keep that. Don't let them dim your light and put your light out and stop you from, speaking out when you see something that's wrong. And it's not like you're being rude or, they always say you're being aggressive. You're aggressive, or you're hateful. You hate things. You're a hater, and that's bollocks. You actually have to. And it's not hating, it's how you put your words across as well. So that's very important. How you put something to present someone who's actually, what I've said, under a propaganda spell, to tell them something, and it's how you put that across, because they will see it. They will see it. The spell of propaganda easily is broken once you see a couple of little things you just need pointing out to you. And once you see those things, wow, it's like a domino. It all goes down. The whole thing just collapses, and you can see the bullshit straight away. It's very easy, but and it's how you put it across. And I think in the past, people have shouted, screamed, and done all sorts of things, and not helped really to get people to see the right things and to see the truth. You can't scream it at people sometimes. I mean, some people have tried, But you know, it's
I think you have to at some people.
it's some, well, again, it's just yeah. But those people who were doing that weren't exactly the truth people anyway. They had an agenda, and they were, you know, that's
Yeah.
again, it's about doing the right things and, you know, using it correctly, the right use, not the misuse or
Yeah.
the abuse or whatever. So I've been listening to Manly P Hall, so I keep waffling on about that shit. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
stuck,
true.
it's stuck in my head. So yeah, so it's good stuff. So that's, and you know, that's how it all should be. You know, I mean, people, if they got onto that right path, they would, you know, we wouldn't have all this chaos and nonsense. We wouldn't listen to them. You know, we'd just go, yeah, whatever.
It's context again as well.
Mm.
Like Guy was saying earlier about, you know, like revealing the politicians and whatever, but and I added in context. You know, you show the context of why they want to do certain agendas, why they push for certain votes or whatever, and you look, well, you know, who are you? Where are you coming from? Who's funding you? Where are you getting your ideas from? All that context.
Yeah.
In the same way, the context applies to yourself as well. You know, so when you're looking at this kind of information and how you take it in and how much you let it influence you one way or the other, and the choices you make of which direction to go, what you do with your energy, you know, context is just as relevant to yourself and your internal world than it is to the external world and everybody else.
Yeah.
They don't want, that's why they've loved the, I know we've sort of rattled on about this many times, things like Twitter, where ideas can get reduced and reduced and reduced until what you're left with is pretty much meaningless. It's the cerebral bubble gum. It's the outpourings of like cognitive diarrhea.
It just reminds me of Idiocracy, the movie coming true.
Yeah.
You know, it's happening.
Simplified and all context stripped away.
Yeah.
So that all you're left with is shouting points.
Yeah.
You know, one side shouts, "We love this guy," the other side shouts, "We hate that guy," and that's it. And you're supposed to, like, you know, that's supposed to be you. Those two choices is supposed to be you.
And have a meme to sum that up.
Yeah.
For
your total enlightenment, here's a picture of an orange. That's all you need. Get on with it.
Yeah, cause more confusion. Yeah, it's I don't know. I've been I was thinking today as well. I was looking at some Corbett stuff. He's put a few things up recently. Said he's been getting censored. Or one of his uploads didn't make it onto YouTube. Surprise, surprise, you know. So it's getting more and more what you call closed in everything now, especially in this environment, this sort of information. But you know, YouTube in the future, who knows? But I think certainly going forward, there's always going to be this type of thing, always. You know, they'll try and put their Joe Rogans out there and their bullshitters and all the rest of them, but this type of thing will always exist because it's done with, you know, it's done with the right energy, it's done with truth, it's done with what people should be doing, you know, just doing it because they want to do it, not because they're going to get famous, get money, you know, anything. No narcissism, no nothing. Just do your thing, and they can't stop that. Like I say, they cul-de-sac us off, but we don't give a fuck. We keep going.
Talking about that dichotomy, those two opposing views, yeah, and oranges. I mean, I remember the time when I first thought about the title of that film, Clockwork Orange. It is perfect left and right. Yeah, it really was a clever title, because you get the idea of an orange, which is an organic thing full of life and vitamin C, and a clockwork mechanism.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, and that as well, context. I think only the way that people understood language when it first came out gave it more impact, say, than it has today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's become like background noise, like white noise.
Yeah. So the language, even the language itself, is easily proportioned into the two sides. Yeah. You've got the mechanical, organic, and inorganic. Yeah, sorry, mechanical, inorganic.
Are you talking about the 6 o'clock news, or?
No, well, I'm just, you know, so you know, they give you two choices to choose from. It's already in our language, you know. Some things go clockwork, something goes orange.
Yeah, I know. I'm just taking the piss. Sorry, Gary. Yeah, the news is not very organic, is it? In that sense, it's very toxic.
Well, it's got lots of bullshit in it, so it
Full of-
should be, but
It's full of Monsanto shit. Yeah.
it's Monsanto shit. It's not good fucking. What's that?
Well, that's do you know that African? No, he's not African. I think he's from Newcastle, in fact. But he works in Africa in an orphanage.
Oh yeah.
Julian.
Yeah, he was putting up videos the other day saying about how how we can help the environment, and he's not sure, and he got a lot of comments pointing him to the global cooling thing, and saying don't believe anything they say. And he said, well, how can we really know, and all this, and what other point was he making? Yeah, I mean, he said to me, there's no point in going on social media and that. You can't do anything. And I absolutely disagree, because a lot of those Extinction Rebellion threads, if you keep your head low and don't talk about global cooling, you can share articles about glyphosate, 5G, which they don't like. They don't like you sharing 5G stuff, but you can share all that. Like I said, the netting of trees that's going on, and then you can tie that into 5G, and all these kids who must be chattering away all the time, they've got some good information there. So people can be steered. Yeah, you can take their own, their own group, their own websites, and their own Twitter feed, and turn it back on them. Yeah, so
counter propaganda.
Yeah, or re-steering them.
Or dissolving the propaganda, revealing it, putting the context back in, so it makes it more obvious for people. Things like that.
Yeah, and check both sides of an argument with these people as well. They just seem to want to take the side that fits what they like. So, that's the stumping and the thinking. They're not using the think for yourself and all the good stuff.
You mentioned that talking effect as well, because that's in effect what Twitter is. Just people talking to each other. Even though I'm not, I don't like the platform.
I don't use it.
But it reminded me of something that I said right at the start that I wanted to mention. Stewie posted a comment under my last video about me saying about just talking, because when we'd been listening to Analogical, and she's saying about, like people just talking is not good enough, basically. And I know it's a continuous argument that's been made for however long time, probably in one way or another. That you got to take action. You can't just talk. Action, deeds, not words. All that kind of stuff, and that's all well and good. Yes, yeah, I see the truth in those statements of deeds need to be done, actions need to be taken. It can't just be all words. But like I was describing earlier about you don't just exist in one place, just in the past or the future. It's both at the same time. And my argument being that it's not just action that gets things done. It's the talking and the actions. And some people are good at doing both. That was, the kind of thing I think Stewie was pointing out and what I was replying to, some people are good at doing both, but not everybody is, or not everybody is capable of doing both for whatever reason. So don't berate people for only being able to do one or the other. If we've got people who are really good at doing action stuff, then point them towards the action stuff that needs doing, and I'm sure they'll roll up the sleeves, get the shovels out, and get on with it. Yeah, but the same for those people that are good at the talking side of stuff. And talking doesn't necessarily mean just like I'm doing, verbalizing, waffling on about stuff. That could be things like memes or other counter propaganda. Moving information around, printing out documents and handing them to people and saying, hey, have you ever read this? It's a sort of form of action, but really it's about the communication, which is talking. So, to me, it's just as important that we have that element happening at once. Yes, actions need to happen. Things need to be happening for changes to actually take place. That is just a logical certainty. That should be obvious. But when you tell people that, you have to do something, you're not doing anything unless you do this. That means you're prescribing to them a certain action. You're demanding of them to do a certain thing. To me, I don't think it's not only fair, it's also missing out a hell of a lot of the people out there who could be helping the situation, but you're excluding them because you're saying something along the lines of, well, those people just talk, so they're useless to us.
I know a good thing you can do. You can demand organic foods in your supermarkets every time you go there. Just say to the guy, can you do all? Do you do any organic? And you go, we don't do that. And he said, what would you like organic? And I said to him, all of it. Well, I didn't say that. Someone else said that. But and then the next week they were getting more organic stuff in. So I thought, okay, but whether it's organic or not, people go, oh, we don't know if it's organic. Well, you don't know anything, but at least they're doing something, or it's telling people you don't want to eat shit. You want to eat good, healthy food, not the crap that they seem to just want to throw on the shelves and give you buy one, get one free and fill you with toxic shit and crap. And you can't think straight anyway because of your diet,
I think it's an important element of the awakening that is occurring across the planet. And I do think there is something happening. I'm not going to go digging into it because it'll take too long, me rattling about it. But an important element is that the system would prefer, like we were talking about earlier with the gaslighting and creating a sense of guilt and stuff like that, the system would prefer that you feel incapable of making any change in the world, that it's only those experts and the special selected people that are actually able to make a change. And that includes right down through the levels of degrees, all the way down to the bottom layers of the society, such that they will give you this ideological attitude of, well, it's got to be deeds and actions, mate. It's no good just talking. That kind of rhetoric reinforces the illusion that you can't do anything unless you can do a particular prescribed thing. So if you're not capable of running a marathon, you're not allowed to run at all. It's that kind of black and white messed up thinking that they put into people so that people don't even want to get involved. Just this one thing, I'm sorry. The classic response you'll usually get when people are going into their awakening and they're starting making their way and they're starting to see some of the shit going on and whatever, and the first thing they start asking is like, well, what can I do about it? There isn't. I feel like there's nothing I can do. It's an unassailable problem. I just, oh no, it's terrible, and that they get pressed back in to the system. So to me, it's an important element to let people know. So don't believe that bullshit. Yeah. Even if all you do is have a chat with somebody at a bus stop, you don't know what that little seed you plant will do. It could change the world tomorrow, depending on who that person interacts with and then who they interact with, etc., etc., etc. A ripple effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was I going to say about Extinction Rebellion? Yeah, I mean, you've got to go and get yourself arrested if you're not going to have any direct action. That's why I mentioned things like tree netting. Now, when I was a kid, when I was 15 years old, if I'd have seen a line of trees with those nets around, and somebody said to me, oh, that's so the birds can't nest, so they can cut the trees down next year, that netting would have been off, man. Yeah, I mean, we would have taken some action, even as kids. Yeah, so there you are. I mean, that's something, Extinction Rebellion, they're asking, I mean, they're saying, oh, let the government know they have to act now. Who are they? The government. Oh, because you can't do it yourself. Yeah, but you can, if you really want to.
They're begging for the legislation is what they're doing.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And it justifies the institution being there, the system being there, because little old you can't do it. No, you need these specialists and experts and politicians.
The other thing I want to say on direct action, it's a myth. Yeah, and that relates to Guy Debord that said the anarchist movement, every political movement needs its own myths. Well, any movement, even individual people need their own myth. I mean, we all build ourselves upon a myth of ourselves. Yeah, which can involve your name, which you went and looked up when you was young. Yes, you did, don't lie. And there was significance even in your house number. Significance for you, whatever your house number was, oh, that's now significant. That's a part of your personality now because you was born at number 4, and 4 is we take these things and build ourselves out of them, for better for worse. So we all build our own myth of ourselves, and the talking is what keep those myths alive. And without those myths, as we were saying earlier on, you know, this is why they want to go and change history. This is why they want to rewrite certain aspects, and they bring Game of Thrones or upstairs, downstairs. That was a real good one. Yeah,
Yeah, my mum loved that one.
Really remind the working class that basically they're just all servants. They're all crap. Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, these are the myths that people have got to see through. We've got to have our own myths. Yeah, our own heroes, if you like, as well.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said before, I mean, I mentioned last week about Edward Bernays and how he said about how your tastes would be, you know, everything would be molded for you. You know, you'd want this, you'd enjoy it. You know, you'd sit there, like you say, your mum liked that show, and millions of people back in the 70s were watching that show. You know, every Saturday night, when it was on, you know, and glued to it. So enjoying it, you know, enjoying that sort of thinking it's history, it's not now. But yeah, we're all sort of we don't see the sort of bars, the mental bars, you know, that they put in there, and you know the restrictions we actually have. Like you say, those experiments they run with rats and mice and stuff. How you train them to, you know, do things or not to do things, and it's the same with us. We're just being, you know, managed in that way, you know, in that sort of way. So it's kind of
structured.
You know, yeah, I don't want to say it was like cattle. You know, we're just being farmed in that sense. You know, and used and harnessed, and
it's
energy harnessed.
It's another example of the power of three as well.
The
fact that at the base level we have three elements, three demographics, three tiers of a class system: the upper class, the middle class, the lower class. I know they're each also subdivided, but that's like the base structure. And it's the two, you know, if you turn it on its side, it says one group there, and then there's a bunch in the middle.
Well, I was thinking of the experiments. Was it Stanley Milgram had done back in the 60s and all that coming to mind? You know, because that's what they're doing right now. That's how they're doing all this stuff.
If you treat people like animals, don't be surprised if they act like animals.
Yeah, and bring on Farage. I mean, I'm going to mention him on Wednesday. We'll have a Farage special on Wednesday night.
There should be Farage.
Yeah. He's the Joker card coming along, you know.
It's better than clowns and clones.
And the rest of them are jokers as well, by the way. But it's just the way that they run this show. You know, it's comedy. You know, you see it all play out, and yeah, here we go. It's you know,
it's gonna be a fun summer.
It is, isn't it? It's been a fun year in that sense of like what's occurred so far.
And I am
leadership's
just to make sure people know and don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I don't mean that genuinely. That's meant to be sarcastic. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of shit flying all over the place this summer. But.
Yeah, it's like when we talked in 2015 when they had the first Brexit, you know, vote when we were coming out, and it was, you know, we've said it many times, say it again, we weren't coming out, we're not coming out, we're in it, we're still in it. It's going to remain that way. They've engineered it so with the political shit that's all gone on these last few years, and yeah, and it's going to be Corbyn or Farage, so either one will take us out. Oh no, I think Corbyn said he's going to remain, isn't he? I'm sure.
Yeah.
So so it's going to be Farage for Prime Minister.
The way he worded it was he respects the majority public vote, but he himself would prefer to remain in. So he's giving this illusion that he will do the will of the people. He'll carry out the will of the people, even though he personally wouldn't choose to, you know, to leave. He would rather stay in.
Should we make a prediction? Should we make a prediction?
Well, yeah, go on.
Just thinking, Farage to declare himself to be in his new party that he'll form to, you know, with this general election coming up, because he formed the Brexit party pretty quick, you know, within a week or two, and then we had the elections on Sunday. So this one coming up, a general election, like you say, be mid-June. Have plenty of time to set something up and get a little party going, and you watch. Yeah. You watch it roll, you know, it'll be no.
Well, you know what helped
No.
What was it that helped him get loads of attention and support recently? Oh yeah, he got hit by milkshake.
That's right.
Maybe if 100 people turn up with milkshakes and they all bombard him, then it guaranteed he'll be Prime Minister then, you know, because he's powered by milkshake.
Well, no one thought Donald Trump would make it, put it that way. So, you know.
I know, yeah, it still gets me. They took it that far. I thought it's crazy enough as it is, and it'll be crazy enough with her in power. But no, they wanted to go one step crazier, one step beyond.
Yeah. We'll get Boris to replace her, and then we'll get Farage to replace him.
That's what worries me. If what they've done in the USA and in other European countries has been similar, where people like that comedian that got elected
In Ukraine.
I know that's a bit of a like protest vote by the public there, to say your system's so fucked, we're going to have a comedian in charge. Yeah, but I can see them pushing somebody like Boris or Gove. Yeah, Gove being man, that's going to be hideous. He's going to, on the surface, he's going to be like John Major, just a blank, I am a flesh puppet. I like serving the public until I decide to do something else. But behind the scenes, there's going to be so many corporate fists up his ass controlling him. He's going to pass anything like Trump does, So, oh yeah, give me a bit of paper, I'll sign that. There you go, that's passed.
Well, I think they know they're dead in that sense, because when an election does come, I think all the chaos Brexit caused and the mayhem, I don't think they would win if you do vote. I think that's the anger that's out there with people, how this process is looking like it won't come to the exit that everybody was expecting and voted for. It's not. It's gone the other way.
Well, that's how they redirect the anti-Europe vote, isn't it? They actually passively support the UKIP Brexit Party and the Tories, and meanwhile, while those two are fighting, Labour get the big majority. Yeah, which again you said last year. Yeah, Corbyn will get in, and we won't leave Europe. Yeah. So that's how they're doing it. Yeah,
be a general election. Corbyn will get in by almost a landslide. Then he'll call a second referendum, and it will be to stay.
Just out of interest, was Zardos and Tommy in the same Brexit party? They weren't, huh? They were in UKIP.
I don't think so. I'm not sure, because I hardly ever look at their shit, man. I don't like to look at their bullshit.
They were standing for Europe, but I don't think Farage would have actually had them in his party.
No, I doubt it. He's a serious politician. They're below his class, yeah.
Yeah, but he also knows he needs to keep credibility, if I'm right, yeah, because he's going to be drawing it all from the Tories.
He'll just get a picture with him holding a point and smoking a fag, right? It'll all be good.
It's time for the country. All those 20,000 people died on the DWP and that. It's time for the Tories to go down big, so everybody can get that big ha ha ha. That'll teach them. They haven't taught them anything. They've been fucking living life of Riley for 8 years, haven't they?
In effect, though, they have been, even though they've been more like a custodial government, and again, this is sort of like the narratives, the agendas, why they've been sat there like a custodial government, basically achieving nothing, doing nothing other than fucking everything up. But they have been pretty much eviscerated. The Tory party is not like it was 20 years ago, even though, they didn't succeed in beating New Labour and Tony Blair or whatever. Even then, back then, there was still some coordination. There was like a core of the party that held it together, and there's those old guard, reliable, conservative politicians that were there. That's all pretty much gone now. Most of those old guard are either died off or they've gone off to work in the corporate market. Now the Tory party is pretty much chopped up. Right? It's a pile of shit and a pile of clowns.
Yeah. So all change then. Yeah. I think that's the thing for this year. Like I say, a lot of changes, a lot of things changing in everyone's lives in 2019. Yeah. It's been an interesting year for a lot of people, myself and others I know as well. It's not just on the global scale or the political scale that they want you to have all these changes, but I think just the energy's different. It's I've just seen a lot happening, and it might just me personally and other stuff, so
it's the 1-9.
Yeah, lots going on.
Going through changes. Oh no, I feel like I need to play an Aussie song.
I did mention once before as well about the myths thing, that they've been changing those myths to allow the change to happen now. That was a precondition.
Yeah.
for it. Yeah, the fast changes that are happening now. I mean, a lot of people's kind of subconscious reaction is to think back to how things were and think, are things really changing that much? And of course, they've been changing history. You know, they've been changing people's ideas about it. Yeah, and we've got the big 9/11 as well. So what we got 18 years since that. Yeah.
Yeah, the 18th anniversary
Mm.
of when they pulled another, well, the biggest false flag in this century, anyway, I'd say. Maybe past ones, they've covered them ones up, haven't they, and hidden everything. So, but certainly in our lifetime, that would be the biggest one of, you know, what's led to a lot of things that
Yeah,
Yeah, in our lifetime.
yeah, in our lifetime, yeah.
Yeah, WT7, the CIA building apparently fell down as well, and they managed to lose a whole hell of a lot of CIA documents. You know, we're talking about things like Guatemalan death gangs, Nicaragua. So that was all, you know, 2001 was a big line under all that old stuff.
They always lose a lot of stuff, don't they? NASA lost a lot of stuff as well, didn't they? All the moon landing and material, everything. They lost it all. It's like, wow, how can you lose all that? It's
Yeah. Oh, you know that diamond you had? Oh, I lost it. Never mind. Do you want to buy a new one?
You lost like a warehouse full of material, just gone.
Yeah.
You know?
You know that old government you had? Oh, we lost it. Do you want a new one? Yeah, the Phoenix effect. Get rid of the old, build the new. Doesn't necessarily mean physical. And I do think there is a lot of physical effect going on at the moment. Yeah, but mostly it's metaphysical. It's non-physical. It's things of the mind and the non-physical aspects of your society that are radically being changed. Some of it is, I think, a natural occurrence of our connection with the cycles of the solar system that lead us to these changes in attitudes that become very deep down in every individual, such that it gets called the awakening, because people can't really explain, what sort of gives them that initial urge, but they start this process. But it's also, the changes in just the structure of your society, your governance, etc., etc., etc. There are major changes going on. Anyway, and speaking of changes, I think I'm going to change it to being the off broadcasting in a moment. I'm going to use my binary ability to be on or off, and I'm going to click the off button fairly soon. But that's just another way of, an elaborate way of saying I'm going to end the broadcast in a minute. Just have a quick scroll up the chat room. I know I said hello to loads of people earlier. I'll try and sort of pick up from where I left off if I can. Hopefully I don't miss anybody out. Hello to everybody in there. Thanks for joining in the chat. Michael Allen, hello.
Dean's in.
Dino, hello Dino. Hope you're all right, mate. I know it's been a lot of cloud cover lately, so we ain't been able to see that much of the moon. Super Leads, hello. Scrolling down. I tend to scroll down fairly quickly, so like I usually always say, I'm sorry if I miss you out. It's just I'm trying to scroll through quick and I might miss you. CMB, hello. Don't know what the CMB stands for, but CMB, hello. I thought that was a name then. Marcus Aurelius. That was Tony typing in Marcus Aurelius. I thought, hey, somebody called Marcus Aurelius. What? Is he still alive? Is he back again?
Incarnated.
Interesting guy. Left some interesting words for you to read and think about. Okay, I'm scrolling a bit quicker because I think Groove Dodger, hello. I think I've reached near enough the bottom, and I think I've said hello to everyone. I say hello every now and then. I don't do it every single show, and sometimes there's a whole lot of chat, and it would take far too long to go through and give a shout out to everyone. But I do it every now and then, and I'm grateful for the fact that people do turn up in the chat and join in. Whether they're talking about what we're talking about or something else. It's good if they're talking about what we're talking about, but as long as you're not being a dick to everyone, then you're free to talk about whatever you want. Just don't take the piss. Don't saturate the chat with spam. That's not the point of it. There's plenty of other places you can go and spread your spam if you want to do that, but don't abuse it. You abuse it, you'll get the foot. Usually the foot's wearing a boot, so you get the point.
I think it's the spanner, isn't it? You get that spanner. The spanner man comes.
Yeah, the spanner turns up to twist your nuts. That's what the spanner's for, twisting nuts. So yes, anyway, long way around. Thanks again. Thanks for tuning in, folks.
Cheers, Cookie. Thank you.
Thanks to Peter and thanks to Gary for joining in.
Yep, cheers.
We're back again on Wednesday night on the Reality Chat channel with Peter doing the reality chat.
Yep.
We'll talk about news events and general events, and a bit like we do now. We talk about lots of various stuff. But it's a bit more focused on news and what's been going on in the world rather than me doing my monologue rambling about.
But it all links in, Cookie. Everything links in. All that.
I know it does, yeah. But I like to let people know that what we do on the Wednesday night is a bit more focused on what's been going on in the news and stuff like that. Whereas sometimes in these chats we can often wander off into like philosophical, esoteric stuff that's got nothing to do with everyday events.
Just basically pointing out the propaganda, really. How they use it and how they'll twist your head up with it and whatever. So yeah, that's what that one's about.
I think Steve will be on Saturday night, as far as I know. Did manage to tune in on Saturday night for the last broadcast. So check out Steve to Goose on a Saturday night, usually 10 p.m. GMT start time. And James Owen, I saw you sneak in there, right? Sneaking in at the end to say hello. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'm going to give up now and click the button in a sec. Thanks again, folks. Take care.
Thanks, Cookie.
Again soon. Cheers.